Welcome back to another episode of Research Design Build. In today's episode, I'm going to introduce you to my newest project, and this right here is a 1988 Honda CRX. Now, this is a Canadian car, and it's seen some Canadian winters, and so I'd really like, hopefully there's a few members of the CRX community that take a look at this thing with me and decide whether this is worth saving or whether this is more of a parts and donor car for another project.
So let's take a walk around the car here and see what we got. Starting on the back corner, we do have a hit on the rear driver's side quarter panel, but as you can see, there's quite a bit of rust on the inner quarter panel that is going to need to be repaired. And then someone's rolled this fender in a pretty crude manner, and there's rust all in that. And as we can see, there's going to be a lot of repair work that is going to be needed, both to the inner and outer fender. Right here you can even see some of the spray foam that is poking through from where they tried to seal it from the inside without actually repairing the steel. On the back side here, taillights. Unfortunately, these are cracked. All three sections have cracks and will require some pretty extensive repair. Are they savable? I'm not sure, but it's going to be pretty challenging. The rear bumper is a fiberglass one, and that one's suited for the trash. And then the rear passenger side quarter panel is also pretty spongy and soft. So we got a couple of spots where we got rust right through. And then we've got the same issue with the inner wheel well being rusted as well. So this is going to require two rear quarter panels as well as some extensive work on the inner wheel wells as well. Moving up to the front, the previous owner has secured all of these trim pieces on with various sheet metal screws and pop rivets, but they all are there. And then we've got a crack in the passenger side mirror. Up on the sunroof, we've got the typical CRX sunroof rust, and so there's another area of repair. And then the front passenger fender, we've got a nice crease in it. Front bumper is in decent shape. And then moving on to the inside, now I have pulled out the seats, and you can see that we've got some sun damage to the door panel, which is pretty standard, and then a lovely customization here of what was once a tweeter. Inside we've got an aftermarket Momo steering wheel that probably was wrapped in some kind of leather, something like that at some point. In the center console we've got an aftermarket stereo wired for subs, and we've got a climate control that is broken in half. Door panel on the passenger side is in pretty darn good shape, minus for the custom tweeter. And in the rear, we've got all of the trim pieces. I do have that little guy over there. The top cargo cover is missing, as it seems to be in almost all CRXs. And I do have this plastic piece that sits down here. There is a crack in it, but I think it's probably repairable. The vertical cargo divider is going to need some work, but it's all there. All the latches are there, so I think that's something that I'll be able to remake. The carpet in the car is actually in really good shape, so that's looking pretty good. It's going to need a wash and maybe a dye, but looking good. When I first originally bought this car, or was looking at it, I thought that it might be one of those cool blue colored cars because the engine bay was same color. But upon some further inspection, it does look like this was resprayed somewhat hastily because there is some overspray on some things like the wiper motor and that sort of thing. So this was originally a black car. Now they've got a different engine swapped in here, and they tried to do the electrical work, but like those are all the injector wires there. Yeah, so this is gonna need a new engine harness before this goes anywhere. This is the rear crash bar, I guess you'd call it, and that looks like it's been down at the bottom of the ocean. But with that removed, the back of the car is actually looking pretty decent. We do have some corners, and again, lots of little pieces of this lovely spray foam. And more spray foam. Now that I've got the full interior out of the car, I was actually able to find out that the rear quarter panels have been replaced, and they actually left some of the original quarter panel still attached to the car. Once I get cutting in on that, it'll be a little interesting to see why they left portions of the original quarter panel still installed. They didn't treat or paint any of the insides, it looks like, once they got the rear quarter panels on, so that has rusted, but that will have to be all cut out again anyways. Now going down the driver's side rocker panel, we've got a lot of rust there. That is the one tricky thing with these cars, is that the original OEM side skirts do cover all of this up, so it is really hard without removing them to really see how bad the rust is. Now I did know that this had some rust, and I did know there was a hole on the floor, but I was not aware that it was as bad as it is in this case here. Moving on to the inside, you can see that there's the hole right sort of by the dead pedal and clutch pedal, but overall the actual sort of main structure of that is looking okay, and I think that we'll be able to work with that and replace that outer rocker. Interestingly enough, on the driver's seat, both rear bolts had rusted out and were loose. Not sure exactly how that transpires. We get the same thing over on the passenger side, although the floor and all of that is looking substantially better. Do have the same rocker panel style rust on the passenger side, a little bit better, and I think this is something that can be cut out and refabricated. Remember, this doesn't have to be super pretty, it just has to be structurally sound, because all of the factory and aftermarket side skirts are going to cover that up.
So now that I've shown you around this new project car that I've bought, let me know in the comments section if you think that I got a good deal or not, or whether you think this is even worth repairing. As for the price, I ended up picking this up for $800 Canadian, about 2 hours from my house. So I had some cost in fuel getting up there and back, so let's say we spend $1,000 between trailer rental and fuel to get up there and back and get this back in the garage. So $1,000 Canadian, we got 750, let's call it US dollars, tied up in this thing as it sits. So with all of these issues, I think they are repairable. I'm gonna start working on it and see where we end up. I've got some rear fenders on order from Wolf Steel in Quebec. I think they're the only company currently that is reproducing rear quarter panels for the CRX. So stay tuned for another video where you can take a look at those. I also have a second CRX that I purchased about a week after I purchased this one. A little bit better shape, a little bit more money, but I think probably a better value overall. And stay tuned and I'll show you that as well. So now I've got two project cars, both the same, both 1988s, and probably doing two different things as far as builds with those, so stay tuned for that.